We spoke last week about, myself and Niall were talking about Imre Arakas. He was due for sentence in Lithuania. Your task on Monday was to try and follow that from afar because, of course, it's not that easy to get to Kaunas. There's only a
No.
couple of flights a week at either end of it. So you would have ended up having to do 7 days.
Yeah, it wouldn't be for me.
One sentence wouldn't be for you. Anyway, you managed to get the information and the details of his sentence, which seems to have confused the courts, or certainly the reporters, a little bit. They don't totally know how long he's going to spend in jail, but...
Yeah, so it seems to, so he was sentenced to 10 years in total, 9.5 for murder, 8 for attempted murder. He's getting 10 years. Now, this is going to be backdated to when he was first taken into custody. Now, he was extradited to Lithuania. That was the start of 2023.
Oh, 23, was it?
Wasn't it? Yeah. Start of 2023. So...
That's 2 years.
But I'm pretty sure, yeah, so they're saying they're not sure exactly how long it's going to be backdated and when he's going to be due to come out, because I think there's some confusion about whether he was in custody in relation to, I think, another crime at the time, or if it's going to be backdated as part of that, or it's going to be backdated to when he was taken into custody in relation to these charges.
He's come a cropper in recent years, Imre, hasn't he? So these ones, let's talk about these ones and the 10 years that he's going to serve.
Yeah, so the first one is a attempted murder of a man called, again, pronunciations here, his name is Zakachizidi, I'm going to say, for an attempted murder. And
sounds like something at the Magic Roundabout.
Yeah. Totally bushing that. His first name is Gija, so maybe we'll go Gija.
Yeah.
So Arakas pleaded guilty to that charge. This murder, or this attempted murder, happened in 2016. He was offered 25,000 for the hit, but he wasn't paid it at all. Obviously, he didn't complete the hit, so he only got travel expenses. You don't do the job, you don't get paid. What happened? So he went to Kaunas. He had been in Spain, went to Kaunas. He attempted to shoot this guy once prior, but he said that his gun had jammed. So I think he had seen him on the street, and then, tried to shoot at him, and then your man seen him and ran away. But he gave all this information during, he was testifying in relation to the murder charge he was up for, which was for a guy called Morkovicius. And he said that he had tried to kill Gija. He shot through a house window. He had seen there was a woman in the house, but he didn't want to kill her as well in the process. So that's why he just left at the 2 shots and went. He was taken into hospital. Interestingly enough, Arakas was actually, there was some civil suits as well, some compensation he has to pay, but one of the fees he has to pay is 15,000 to what I assume is the equivalent of the government. It's like the state security fund, 15,000 euros for the care of Gija after he had been shot. So I assume for the hospital, for maybe ambulance fees, whatever there might be there. So Gija is now in witness protection. So he testified remotely to the hearing for Morkovicius. He was a friend of Morkovicius. He testified remotely and is in witness protection in Lithuania now.
So this was a sort of a 2-tier hit. He was obviously been paid to kill both of them, or certainly took on the 2 jobs in around the same time. One of them succeeded and the other one didn't.
So the other one for Morkovicius, that was a few months later, and obviously that one was successful. Now he was offered 50,000 for that one. He didn't get paid for any of it, or sorry, he only got paid 5,000 for that one. So he wasn't having a great time in his line of work. The guy who ordered the hits was a guy called Thomas Helenas, and he ordered both, and apparently he was a middleman for a gang in Spain. However, Arakas told the court that it's his belief that the actual people who were ordering the hit were in Kaunas, because he said it was something to do with the timestamps on messages he was being forwarded through an encrypted messaging service. But on the 21st of December 2016, he was outside Morkovicius' house in his car. He seen Morkovicius get out of his own car and walk into his home. Now, he's an MMA fighter. I think he'd been at the gym or something like that. Got out of his car, went to walk inside. Arakas got out of the car, shot at him 7 times using a Kalashnikov. And residents nearby said they thought that it was fireworks. They were shocked, didn't know what was kind of going on. And this one he gave, a bizarre sort of, he pled guilty to it and apologised for it. He said it was something that he was very, very sorry about, and he said it was the biggest mistake of his life, and he wished if he had the opportunity to do it again, he wouldn't do it. Which was an interesting, I suppose, admission from this guy who's supposedly this underworld hitman.
Well, you see, if you think about it, he has been in jail, firstly in Ireland, since April of 2017, when he was caught in this plot to kill James Mago Gately. And, he was under surveillance and he was arrested some communication from those encrypted phones was photographed before it deleted and was used against him as evidence. So 2017, you're coming up to 8 years in prison. That's a long time at his age. Now, what is he, 68?
He's 67.
67. So he's lying in a cell with a lot of his own thoughts and all the rest of it. Now, maybe he's not a bit sorry, or he's not, but maybe he is. Who knows? You know, he seemed to have quite a mad life up to that point. Of course, in 2015, and he would later be convicted of the murder of Diamantis the Diamond Bugavicius, who was going out with a very famous pop star in Lithuania. All of those 3, anyway, murders, and in actual fact, the conspiracy to murder James Mago Gately. He was hired on each occasion down in the Costa, where he was living. And he was working with a big group of hired killers. So that was their skill set. So they were basically working as freelance hitmen. It's probably cheaper to hire a freelance than have your in-house.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So it's a bit old school to have your in-house. The Kinahans actually did have a number of in-house hitmen who were on retainers and would have been paid per hit. But it's probably easier and safer for your cartel to use a guy like Arakas, who will go do the job in a country that maybe he's not known in. It was kind of frightening to hear that those guys were down in the Costa, you know, and you could, if you had the right money, 25 grand.
Yeah.
It's not a massive amount.
It's not a lot. No, but people have been killed over less. And I suppose when I went into this sort of researching about his history and stuff, obviously I'd known about Mago Gately, but only kind of really seen the details of these crimes. And he's got this image of being this secret, deadly assassin, but he's not really good at his job. Like, he's really not great. If he's, you know,
we don't know what he's got away with.
Exactly. If he's jamming guns.
Like, usually they can, and some of them can keep getting away. We'll never find out who they are, but things just start to go wrong for him. Firstly,
majorly.
In 2015.
Yeah.
And maybe that was because of the high profile nature of that murder, because some gangland murders and, you know, one criminal shooting another one, a country sometimes isn't willing to place the resources into those investigations, and they just accept it as part of organised crime. And particularly in Eastern European countries, they have come to the table in recent years to Europol, and, you know, they have been cooperating. And it was the cooperation of the police forces that ended up getting him caught, because the Estonians were helping the Lithuanians. They were kind of digging into their intel system to try and find out who had killed Bugavicius, who was shot dead beside this pop star girlfriend. And it was a huge story in Lithuania. But the Estonians were able to go to their contacts and come up with 2 names plus Imre Arakas. Both of those police forces worked with Eurojust and Europol, who then sort of put a tracker essentially on Arakas. So everywhere he went, in as much as they could, they watched him. Now, no doubt he travelled on false passports like many of them do. But it was purely because he was getting on a flight to Dublin, to Ireland. And, you know, it kind of red flagged because there was a feud on here.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how he was caught.
Yeah, what's going on?
And like, you know, lastminute.com, there's a scramble for an undercover officer to go follow him. Like, had he not even made it onto the bus with him, who knows what would have happened. But that's sort of how he came. And bear in mind, he was 60 in 2017 when he's finally placed into custody.
Yeah, so certainly like his earlier years, there's not much detail. There's, you know, he had in the 70s, there was sort of those political...
Colourful life.
Yeah, very colourful. And then it's sort of, he moves to, you know, Spain in the early noughties, and he's obviously surviving hit attempts.
Yes.
There obviously is stuff going on there, but I suppose maybe with age, he is kind of getting a bit worse at the job because, you know, attempted hits, he's not actually succeeding. You know, but he's obviously as well, I found it so interesting, the stuff about he was saying that he was using different pairs of shoes that were too big. And he sort of, like you had said, in conversation with Niall, he has this very specific MO of his habits and how he does things.
Yes.
And I suppose as well, I was wondering, how do you travel from Spain to Lithuania with guns in your car? But of course he was driving, which is just a concept to us.
Know, if you look at what happened here in Ireland, because of course you can't fly into Ireland with a gun, you have to source it in the country. They were sourcing it for him.
Yeah.
And he wanted to get used to the weapon and use it. But I think more so that he wasn't getting as good at the job, because when you see the detail of what he was doing, he was obviously very skilled at that stage, very dangerous. And we know of 2 murders he took on in 2016. that we're aware of, one in 15, one in 17, all big enough paydays. I mean, the murders here were 100,000. The Kinahans were paying him for Mago Gately, and if you got a second one, another 100,000. It's actually probably, I mean, if you paid tax on that, it'd be 100 grand. Probably isn't enough for the risk of spending the rest of your days in prison. But the mathematics of organised crime sometimes don't make sense. But I actually do think that what unstuck him was that cooperation that really you only see happening in Europe. Like when Europe kind of opened its borders and all the police forces were to come together in Europol, it was kind of in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s, that they start working together. By 2010, Operation Shovel is the first actual, European project against an organised crime group. It was a spectacular failure for many reasons, and probably because the different police forces just didn't trust one another.
Yeah.
It took them a long time to start sharing proper information and intel. And really there's a corner turned in around 2015-16 when they do start sharing this proper intel. And I think that's more so what has him caught.
Rather than his own.
Because if the Irish hadn't been alerted to him being on his way in here, nobody would have known.
Nobody would have had a clue. No. I mean, it's fascinating the way they followed him and the way he came into the country pretending he was going camping and with all that gear on his back and then going
and a confidence
and stuff.
To do that.
Oh, very
he
much
was
so,
used to doing that. And I think probably as well, I think the Kinahan, the people who hired him believed that, like at that stage, there was 2017, there was certainly multiples. There was 15 maybe murders. There was many of them unsolved. The police had been run ragged really since the Regency Hotel of 2016. They had been focused on local hit teams and cell structures and dismantling them within the Kinahan organisation. And I think they thought it was their trump card, send him in, and sure, who in the cops will have a clue who he is, and this is really clever and we'll get him. But they didn't bank on the fact that the Estonians, the Lithuanians, everybody was talking, police-wise. So where they had come together over the years to make much more successful cartels by bringing their various expertise behind the scenes, the police had built that trust at that stage, and he comes undone. But 10 years seems so little. So he pleads guilty to murder. Nobody really pleads guilty to murder here because it doesn't gain you anything.
No.
It's a mandatory life sentence, whether you plead guilty or you're found guilty. So, over there, obviously, his guilty plea. What did the court say that it was in his favour? His guilty plea.
Yes,
his remorse.
It was they said it was a remorse, and there was also the fact that he had apologised to the victims, and they were mitigating factors, and of course the guilty plea, like we said. But they had said that sort of the callous way he had sort of organised and everything like that, were kind of not in his favour in terms of sentencing. But he also had to, there was some civil compensation claims filed as well as part of this, which is again something we don't really see in Ireland at all. So he has to pay compensation amounting to €266,000. So it's the girlfriend of Morkovicius, and they have 2 children together. So each of those get 50,000. Morkovicius has another child with another woman, and that child is also getting 50,000 in damages. Now, I believe the mother of that child also put in a claim for damages, but her claim wasn't successful. But she does get, I think, 51,000 in maintenance for rearing.
And I wonder, does that come out of his pocket, or if he doesn't have it, what do they do? Do they seize his assets? We must try and find that out. It's
that'll be interesting to find out.
There is a kind of a victim compensation set up here in Ireland that you can apply to, but it's a state-funded thing, and it's the state who pay out compensation to victims of crime. You don't see anything like that going through the court. But how would that operate? Because, most people actually, sort of that I can think of, who take on the role of a hitman probably don't have saving.
No. Where would you be putting it? Exactly.
And they also have this sort of attitude that you spend, so it's gone. But, it's interesting. And that's the case done. That's the last we're going to essentially hear from.
Possibly. I mean, in the reporting in Lithuania, and I couldn't really figure out if I was getting it lost a bit in translation or if it's actually the case, but they said that the sentencing, it hasn't come into force yet. He has 20 days to appeal it. Right. So I don't know if he has this natural 20 days where he can appeal.
Just the sentence, obviously, because he's pleaded guilty. So you can't sort of turn around and say.
Or if it's a case that, it's lost in translation and they just mean that the sentence has started and he has the 20 days. days. But that was one of the things he did. The only times he spoke to the court was to ask the judge, there's 3 judges in that court, to ask them to clarify exactly how long he had to appeal the sentence. I mean, he looked so dishevelled, and just if you look at the earlier pictures of him, some of the sort of the earlier ones of him with, you know, with the bald head, and he looks very tough. There's a picture of him sort of he's sort of posing almost. It looks like a magazine picture where he's kind of posing, looking off to the side in like a leather jacket, and just to see the difference in him and how he looks now. He's got this long grey hair, a long beard. He sort of looked, you know, very kind of humpled over and very, I was shocked to find he was only 67. He looks a lot older now.
He does, certainly. Prison obviously isn't suiting him. But, you know, I see him. I see the latest picture of him there. Oh my goodness, yes, he's definitely, yeah. We'll try and get that picture up on the podcast as well. I was going to say they've even shaved off a little bit of his name. They call him Imre Arakas.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what that's a strange one. I don't know if it's a
another punishment.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd be called Nicola Toll.
Yeah.
Right, Clodagh, thanks a million.
Thank you.
Robbie Lawler was out of control.
This is Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler.
It was going to be an all-out war with him in the middle of it.
A Crime World special investigation podcast based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.